Alicia, and I'm going to be describing my speaking activity titled Playing Cards. It is what it sounds like. It is just playing cards, but it has a little bit of a twist on it for the speaking activity, which makes it pretty unique. The class description, I hope to teach abroad, not really particular, but currently considering Taiwan. So my lesson here, or my activity here, is geared towards a high school English class in a traditional Taiwanese high school, relatively ages 14 to 17. I'm guessing the class size would be about 15 to 20 students, and at a proficiency level of around level 3 developing, which is an intermediate level of proficiency. However, it can vary. And although it is for intermediate level, I believe that a Taiwanese high school class would probably have a higher proficiency in grammar understanding and possibly less proficiency in speaking skills. Not necessarily that they don't have the level of knowledge to speak, but that sometimes they are a little bit more shy because they haven't had as much speaking practice. And I'm speaking from experience, as I was an exchange student in Taiwan for a period of time. So my high school English classes in Taiwan kind of followed this model. So I would say that they can understand more complex speech, but they may still require some repetition due to some restricted command of language structure and vocabulary. So I think this activity helps build a lot of confidence and a little bit more understanding and kind of informal conversation. So my big idea is producing a question about informal topics can facilitate participation in effective social conversations for language learning, which will make more sense as I explain my activity. My learning objectives is students will be able to demonstrate their speaking ability in English, both in terms of fluency and comprehensibility in informal conversation. Students will be able to participate in routine social conversations in familiar contexts, including relationships, travel, family, memories, jobs, or other forms. And lastly, students will be able to produce simple statements, questions, and commands using familiar vocabulary. So the actual activity procedure, students are given a deck of cards and in different suits. So there's pre-selected topics for each unit of cards, and they can change depending on student preferences if they would rather talk about different things, or depending on the unit of study. If we were studying seasons, for example, we could talk about different seasons in each suit. But for this example, diamonds would be travel, hearts would be relationships and family, spades would be memory, and clubs would be money and jobs. So these are just some example topics that students could talk about in this activity. So to continue to talk about the activity, ultimately students are put into groups of 3 or 4 and asked to pick a card from the deck. I'd prefer to give each group a different spade, or a different unit to be able to talk about, a different suit, basically, so that each group has like a different topic, but each group basically picks a suit from the deck, and depending on what suit the group gets, they can collaborate to create about 5 to 6 questions related to the corresponding topic. So they don't have to do it alone. They are in groups, so they don't have to come up with these questions on their own. They can talk, and it's kind of a form of scaffolding too, that they can collaborate with their partners to create questions regarding to these topics here, depending on their suit. So if they got a heart, for example, like a 7 heart, now they'd be talking about relationships and family, and they have to come up with 5 to 6 questions related to that topic. So students are encouraged to create questions using who, what, when, where, why, and how. And yes and no questions are not really allowed unless they can be expanded upon, like they ask to explain or expand in their question. So a little bit more continued, after the groups have created their questions, and they can write these down on a piece of paper so they have a visual aid, they will form new random groups of 3 to 4 with mixed up questions. so hopefully nobody in the same repeating group. And in these new groups, students will take turns asking each other these questions that they created and answering them as well. This can take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes to start, but of course it can go much longer, and depending on how much you change up the questions. So a little bit of scaffolding, which I think can be done throughout this whole lesson, but who, what, where, when, and why should be written somewhere so that the students can refer back to them, either on the board or in a handout. Lesson should also start off with a practice round of the game, with the teacher providing examples of ideal ways the activity should go, perhaps asking for a student volunteer, having them come up to the front and going through a demonstration of what the activity should look like so that students kind of have a general idea. Another way is building on prior knowledge, of course. This unit would hopefully incorporate examples from all different types of the unit, so if whatever the unit is, hopefully scaffolding on the prior knowledge that they already know, and using vocabulary terms and questions that they already know. A little bit more scaffolding continued. It's important to pre-teach the relevant vocabulary and providing handouts of these terms with pictures. So if we're going to talk about travel, relationships, family, memories, money, and jobs, I would provide a list of relevant vocabulary that kind of goes along with these topics, and give pictures as well so that students can refer back to them if they're drawing blanks or anything like that. They can also have access to glossary, thesaurus, any way that they need to look up terms if they are just struggling to find the right way to ask a question or talk about it. And then also sentence starters should be available in a handout or a PowerPoint form of a visual aid when the teacher is giving directions, or written on the board, along with any directions or anything, so that some students have a visual aid of that. And then lastly, I didn't write it here, but students are collaborating in groups, so they have their partners and their classmates to work upon and kind of bounce ideas off of. So if they are not quite sure of a vocabulary word or a way to ask a question, they can ask for help from those around them, and of course the teacher as well. So thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing your guys' activities, and I hope you guys liked mine. Have a good day.